Sorry. Okay, we'll call the work session for the King William County Planning Commission to order. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Spluter?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here.
Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Greenwood? And Mr. Reagan?
The next item is consideration of minutes for the November 9th, 2021 meeting. Does anyone have any comment on those minutes?
That's for next week. That
Am I
thick,
looking at the wrong agenda?
that thick packet is for next week.
I'm just sitting around. Okay. There's no public comment period, none of that, so.
Now we're gonna go straight into
So
work
we can just
session
go right
topics.
into the work session topics and discussion of the comprehensive plan and field studios, and for that,
What is the best microphone in place for me to speak from?
Either the one,
Either one?
that was on there or the one at the podium.
Okay, I guess in terms of public, maybe they want me here. It would work great if I could just do here.
That's fine.
That's
I'll
fine.
be able to hear you and see you.
Okay, great. All right. Well, hello, welcome everybody, and thank you for inviting me to come to your work session tonight. I am Evie Sloan, and I am the senior planner for Hill Studio, and we have been writing diligently the comprehensive plan for King William County over the past 2 to 3 months. I'm here to go over that initial draft with the Planning Commission. Not necessarily, I don't expect to get formal comments from you, but following this, I do want to at least make some comments before, I guess we release it publicly. I'm not really sure, Sherry, how is this document going to be made available to the public anyway?
Well, it is on our webpage.
Oh, it is already? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. But anybody who is tuning in, or, I mean, it is certainly the first draft, and the Planning Commission has not seen this draft. So there may be changes that are needed, but it's fine if it's a public document. So anyway, I wanted to just work with the Planning Commission tonight. If you want to go to the next slide. So tonight, what I wanted to do was to just provide you with an overview of the draft plan, because you've had it, I guess, maybe about a week and a half, and that was right before Thanksgiving. So a lot of people probably haven't had an opportunity to read through it. But I wanted to provide you with an overview of the plan and what's in it. In particular, I wanted to point out that if someone wants to get the guts of the plan, because I think it's about 100 pages or more, you can look at the executive summary that is a great executive summary. And that executive summary points out the vision and goals, which are very, very important for the county and for this plan. And also it identifies several potential action projects that we'll kind of go over some of that a little bit later. But anyway, I did want to go over a plan overview, and then in particular talk about the future land use that we have drafted, the future land use categories, the future land use maps, and then talk about what the next steps in the process is, how to get comments on the drafts, future work session with Board of Supervisors and EDA, and then of course a public workshop, probably before the work session with Board of Supervisors. So next slide, please. So here is a flow chart of the comprehensive plan. We started in January, looking at the conditions and research and really meeting with different stakeholders. We also undertook a demographic and market analysis to understand what the trends were in King William County. In the middle of the summer, we held a planning and development workshop for certain priority areas and topics. And I'll share some of the results of that workshop with you a little bit later, but those priority areas were economic development and recreation, preservation of the rural landscape, and in particular, growth and development in the central garage area, to name a few. And of course, what we've done now is that we have drafted the comprehensive plan. And so we're in the process of going through the draft and tweaking that, and adding to it or subtracting from it, whatever, and changing where we basically need to. And then we'll start public hearings. But one of the things that I want to point out is that we also had a public survey that was started at the beginning of this project. I think that survey was launched maybe in February or early March, and it is still active. So far, we've gotten about 550 responses from citizens in King William County on that survey. And what we're finding is that the comments, many of them are open-ended, but we're hearing some of the same things, and we'll kind of, so a lot of that discussion is actually in the plan, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over that, but that survey is still open. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the executive summary. So we have in that executive summary the purpose of this plan. And it's important to point out that this comprehensive plan is a guide for the future. It is not a mandate. It is not a regulation. It is a guide that decision makers like the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors use to make public investments. And it forms the foundation for how regulatory tools may be revised or updated, but it's essentially guiding the vision for King William County for the future. In that executive summary, there's a brief overview of King William County. There is a whole section on vision and goals. And let me just point out that those vision and goals deal with a healthy and safe community, a diverse and balanced economy, a planned responsible infrastructure, celebrated and protected environmental and cultural resources, and planned and managed land development. So there's, I guess maybe about 10 or 12 goals, as well as a vision for King William County. And that vision and goals, all of those were developed based upon the public comments that we received at public workshops from stakeholders and through this survey that is still active. And then there is a section on what are some of the key initiatives that are recommended to really guide King William County into 2041. And some of those key initiatives are related to rural landscape character, preserving rural landscape character, development in central garage, a small village at King William Courthouse to provide needed business development services kind of midway in the county, but also to offices that, and courts that are here in King William Courthouse. Improvements, potential improvements to business parks and industrial development, and in particular, modernized infrastructure, and that is especially relative to internet broadband. We've heard that consistently throughout this project, as well as water, sewer, roads, that type of thing. And then I'd like to go into the organization of the plan. So the plan essentially has 5 sections. The first section is the executive summary that really gives you the guts of what you can expect to read in the full plan and what the recommendations are. The second section is the community planning process, how we've developed the plan, what kind of public input we received, how we got that public input, and what basically the community's vision and goals were. The third section is about King William County and the region, because you really are just an extension of the region, and the region affects the way that you grow as well. So we have a little bit about the history of King William County, the regional influences, and then we've got a summary of the demographic and economic trends for the county. And the bad news is that the census information for 2020 is still not available. It won't be available until probably March of 2021. The good news is that Arnett Muldrow, who was the economist who worked with the demographic and economic trends, they actually use a subscription service that does have up-to-date data with it. And so we do have good numbers and good information, but it just is not reflective of the 2020 census. But hopefully that can be integrated if we get it in time. I don't know. The fourth section is really the meat of the long-range plan. It really talks about existing conditions and development opportunities for the county, and they are structured in sections about people and community facilities, and that deals with things like housing. I've got to look at my, can't see that far. Housing, education, recreation, community facilities and services. So it's like your EMS, your sheriffs, your public safety, your public library. And then there's a section on the economy, which deals with things like agriculture, small business, industrial development, corridor development. Then there's a section on public infrastructure that deals with transportation and utilities, water, any kind of septic sewer issues. There's a section on natural and historic resources, and we focus primarily on those historic resources that are on the National Register of Historic Places. And then a big section that really guide us into the future is the section on land use and development. And so that's the section that I really want to spend some time with the Planning Commission tonight to help with any questions that you may have on the future land use categories and the future land use map. And then the fifth section of the plan is, okay, so you have this document, it's 100 pages, and you've got some great ideas in here, but what do we do with it now? And so it's been our experience that if you identify some of these potential action projects and you work with community leaders to implement that people really get excited about what that can mean for the county. The one thing that I want to just say to you, and I think you already probably know this, but citizens who are listening may not, is that government does not have the financial resources or the ability to be able to do all of the things that are in this plan. It is going to take partnership efforts with citizens, with civic organizations, with businesses, and county leaders to be able to achieve this long-term vision. These action projects are meant to be kind of the catalyst that will take you to what you really want for 2041, but it is something that is really going to have to be a partnership effort. And then can you go back, please? The one point that I want to make is that there's also in this plan what I like to refer to as an implementation matrix. And it is a table, and we'll show you that in just a minute, but it is a table that talks about the goals for the community in the future, some potential strategies, and some action projects that may take place. Who are the partners that you need to involve, and what kind of time frames we're kind of looking at? And what happens is that table allows you to be able to at least have some kind of a checklist for the things that maybe you want to be doing or that you want to monitor. And a lot of communities will use that checklist and look at it on an annual basis and begin to prioritize what initiatives they really think are the most important. So we'll go over that. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk about some of these priority action initiatives. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. These are some of it's a summary sheet that we have developed based upon the workshop that we did in July. So these are initiatives that have been vetted with the Planning Commission and the previously, and also vetted with the public workshop. Next slide. So one of the priority action projects is what we refer to as agricultural preservation subdivision. So we heard a lot about preserving the rural landscape, and especially the agricultural characteristics of certain parts of the county. And so this concept board that we put together basically explains how you might preserve the rural landscape, and how you might, if you are going to put in a residential subdivision, how that residential subdivision could be done in such a way to be able to preserve some of the rural character features on a particular piece of property. So that is one way of being able to preserve some of the landscape that you have in King William County. And so I would encourage anybody who really is very interested in this to look at this in the document. Next. Another key initiative that we identified was rural corridor preservation, and in particular Route 360. And so there are several different scenarios, development scenarios, that are presented on this concept board from south to north, that show different ways that the 360 corridor can be landscaped or signage controlled, or different kinds of wildflower planting, for instance, in the middle, and gateway signs. And it is a way of really maintaining that rural landscape character that you now get when you enter one end of the county and then go to the other. Next slide. This is probably the most important of the concepts that we discuss in the comprehensive plan, and this is Central Garage as a growth area. The Central Garage has a roads network. It has utilities, water, and some sewer that are going to be expanded in the future. There is at least one major corner of the intersection of Route 360 and 30 that is vacant right now, that can really serve as a model development for density. The one thing that I have to stress to the Planning Commission and to anyone who is watching is that in order to preserve that rural character and to maintain a reasonable cost for public services, is that you must focus your development in a concentrated area to keep costs down, to provide the services that you need to provide, and to allow conservation of the rural parts of the county that are very important. So this particular growth area shows a lot of mixed use development, concentrated density, and it is probably the most important for the future. Next slide. Another concept was the King William Courthouse Village. And originally, we actually had this village located in the forest, right near the central green, just outside of the wall of the courthouse. But then we found out that there are archaeology digs and things that are going on in that forest. So we have actually moved it back between the administration building and the courthouse. But essentially, it becomes a new village with support small businesses, and it could be professional offices. It could be some retail. I see it primarily as offices with some recreational components and maybe a small amount of retail. A restaurant, for instance, so that you can get lunch if you're employed by the court system or the county administration. But this was, I think, a real exciting thing for several people. The one thing is that this is a concept. There does need to be careful archaeology and just historical information kind of taken into account for whomever may develop this. But in the county, I can't see as being the developer. The county would probably recruit a developer to be able to do this. Next slide. And then we also looked at business and industrial park development. And because King William Commerce Park was a topic of a lot of discussion, we put together some ideas for how that park could be redeveloped and serve as an example for other business parks as well. So there are some great ideas for being able to have mixed use development and common landscape areas and improved infrastructure and improved gateways and all kinds of things in that particular example. But it could apply not only to King William Commerce Park, but any other park that you might have in the future. Next one. And then the final one was dealing with recreational opportunities. When we met with your Parks and Recreation Director, there's been some improvements to the King William Park, but there are additional opportunities to include other facilities if the county wanted to expand the park. And so what we did is that we developed a scenario for expanded facilities that may be considered in the future for recreational activities. And I think that includes some additional ball fields, some soccer fields, and kind of more trail systems. One of the things that we heard a lot was that there was a need for additional hiking facilities. And we heard a lot from the community that they needed an auditorium where children could actually hold a recital. And so on this board and in the plan, we've recommended that type of facility be done in conjunction perhaps with the renovation of the high school, if that's a good possibility, because then they would have 24 7-day week or 5-day week use of it, and it's not a maintenance issue for just the people who may want it for a recital. The other item on this board that's important is access to the water. And so there are several new places identified for canoe and different kinds of water access. So that's another important board. Next slide. So this is an example of the implementation matrix that I was talking to you about earlier. It's grouped by goals with strategies, and the timeframes are in the center with the 3 columns in the center, and they are defined as, I think, 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and 10+ years. And some of the items that are there are probably continuous that you might work with over a long period of time, and others are maybe just something that you need to do soon, and get that strategy taken care of. And then in the far right-hand column is a list of the people who would share some kind of responsibility or should be involved with helping with that particular strategy. Okay, next one. We also have, and we've got this in the plan, more of a summary, but we do have an entire appendix that is dedicated to the demographic and the market assessment that was done. In that section, there are demographics. There's what's called a market segmentation report, which is it is a summary of where there may be potential consumer market bases that a business owner may be interested in recruiting as or targeting their sales to. It can help in terms of identifying potential consumers and how to increase your market. We also had a full detailed analysis on the commercial market and where there was leakage and where there were opportunities, and what needs to be done to increase those business opportunities. There's also a section on housing in terms of the housing sales and where there were gaps in the market. So again, it's a very important section, and it's summarized in the comprehensive plan, and there's the details in the appendix A. And so one of the things, for instance, in this summary is that they identified key categories for the future where there may be opportunities for business growth. And so there's opportunities in general merchandise, there's opportunities in new restaurants and eating places, and grocery stores, and home centers, and clothing stores, and health and personal care. Next slide. And so the last thing that I wanted to really go over with the planning commission tonight is the future land use. So let's talk about that. So one of the things that we noticed when we started working here is that King William County has some unique areas that have certain characteristics associated with them. And we can change the names of these. These were just some that we kind of came up with that seemed to kind of work for us. But the western end of the county is more upland. And so there's a lot of forested areas there. A lot of the older part of the county is there. And it's very rural. The crossing is the central garage area. That's essentially where you have the Route 360 corridor running south to north, and central garage in the middle, and Manquin and Aylet at either entrance there at the county. And that is the most urbanized and also the area where you have existing utilities, you have your road network there, Route 30 and 360. And that's where most of your businesses are that serve the county. And then you have this area that's the eastern part of the county, which is really a legacy area. That's where your Native American tribes basically have lands. There is a lot of primarily agriculture and very, very low density development in that area. It's a very unique place in the county that's different from Kings Forest or the Crossing. And then of course you have West Point, which is the town of West Point that is much more of a small town kind of a street grid with industry and waterfront there. So there's 4 areas. So go to the next slide. So this is a scene that you might find in Kings Forest. In the next slide. And then here's Central Garage, what you might find with the Crossing. And then here's what you might see in the Legacy area. And here's what you might see in West Point. So you've got a downtown. Okay, so let's talk about the future land use categories. So what I did is that I like to look at the existing zoning ordinances that you have and try to pair the future land use categories with your zoning ordinance, if at all possible. Sometimes that doesn't work, but in your case it did. And so I tried to maintain some of the same naming. And so we have agriculture conservation. You've got an agriculture conservation district. You have a low density rural residential district. You've got a medium density residential district. Which is called your suburban residential district in your zoning, but that's really a medium density residential district. The county at the present time does not really have high density residential development. You might expect that if you were a city like Richmond or Washington, D.C., and I'm not saying that, say, in the next 20 years you might not need a high density residential district, or the next 40 years. But I think in the next 20 years, if you can get quality medium residential development and your business, I think that's the goal, not necessarily to encourage high density residential in the central garage area. Then you have a category called community business, which is really your crossroads business areas like in Mangahick or maybe some of your crossroads communities where you have like a little garage, a little grocery store or country store. or maybe you've got a gas station. And then you have the Carter business, which is really what you would find along the 360 corridor. Then you've got corporate business and industrial, which is really your like your industrial parks, your commerce center. And then you've got, of course, planned development, which is where a developer would come in and suggest to you a particular plan development, which planned developments, I think, are something that should be encouraged. And you've got a good ordinance that I think has substantial standards in it. There might be a few places that you might want to make some adjustments. But planned development, I think, is going to be the direction that the county really needs to go for residential and mixed use kind of development. So when I say mixed use, I'm talking about residential and small business. And then I think one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is a growth development area. And sometimes the state of Virginia refers to this as an urban development area. And it may be that instead of calling this, I like the word growth development area because I think it's to the point. But if the state provides monies based upon an area being defined as an urban development area, I want to be sure that we use the right terminology in this plan to be able to get you whatever you need. Next slide. So one of the points that I wanted to bring out to you, and I'm sorry I didn't put this in a slide because it's just too much text, but on page 104 of the plan, there is a table that discusses the future land use categories that were in the list that we just basically had on screen. And this table provides you a description of what that land use should be. It also provides you in the center a recommended density or intensity of development. And then there is a column that's on the right-hand side that gives you some examples of what that character might be for that development. So I could spend an hour or more probably going through those future land use categories. So I think probably the best thing for you to do is to read those to see if you agree with those or you find issues with them. And I guess I would like to talk probably about this growth development area, which I see as Central Garage. And we'll talk about this map, and then maybe it will make a little bit more sense. So this map has those future land use categories coded in the legend on the right-hand side. The rural residential, which is your rural residential category, is shown in yellow, the lighter yellow. The medium density residential areas are those that are a lot of the existing subdivisions or platted subdivisions around Central Garage. And the red is the corridor business. The industry is in a purple. It kind of looks a little blue there, but it's supposed to be kind of a purple color. The little country stores, the rural commercial, which is really your Carter, your community business, those are in a pink and they're kind of scattered. You might not be able to see them on the map unless you're looking at it really closely. But most of the county is actually in agriculture and conservation. We have identified some public lands on this future land use map because you have not only public facilities, but you also have some public forest lands that are shown there. And then, of course, the town of West Point is kind of shown there on the end, but the county does not regulate future land use in the town of West Point. So let's talk about this future growth area. What I ended up doing is that you had online a future land use map that I don't know that was ever really adopted, but I think it was, you were using it as a guide, and it goes back to the studies that were done in 2016 for urban development, for the urban development area. And that was to really focus growth around the central garage area. And so what I did is that I took that map. They had these limits, these growth boundaries. They had identified a growth area for 2010, a growth area for 2015, a growth area for 2020. And so I've just started with the exterior growth area. And I don't know whether that growth area is too large, whether it needs to be smaller. But the bottom line is that we want to establish a growth area around the central garage community so that when you do have development that comes in, that it is focused where those utilities are. My feeling is that your more dense residential development should be as close to the central garage and the 360 corridor as possible. And your more rural residential development is basically kind of out of that for right now. So your initial growth area could actually be just around the perimeter of the orange area, with an expanded growth area where the yellow is. It's really up to you all how much you want to be able to show growth. I think right now you've got a master utility plan that has water available for the next probably 20 years, and that's still to be built. And that is really focusing primarily on the orange and red area, not the yellow. Of course, rural residential really doesn't have public utilities. It's more of a well system, septic, and not really like it's much smaller. And this map has a lot of lot lines and things on it, Sherry. I don't know where they got those lot lines. I don't know that it's tied to the county's GIS system. So I kind of envision this future land use map that it probably needs to be a little bit more general and not necessarily tied to, it might, the colors may follow the lot lines, but I don't necessarily think that we would actually show lot lines on the map. That's something that we can talk about later. I don't know what, I guess I'm at a point where I'm open for questions, and I realize I've thrown a lot at you right now, and if you've read the plan, then you may be in better shape than somebody who's just glanced at it.
I think you almost have to show lot lines to kind of identify where you are, or at least streets, to be able to identify exactly where, pretty much where you are. Different times.
So do you want the adopted land use map to show the streets?
I think the streets give a better way to identify where you are,
Okay.
for the rest of it, I think.
At least the streets, I guess.
Yeah.
Streets. Individual lot, the street can give you.
I think we about that idea. And the lot lines, I mean, the boundaries don't necessarily need to follow the streets. But
Okay.
they could be outside of the street, so that you have the same kind of development on each side.
So if the future land use map had the street network underneath it and not the lot lines, you at least have a more general idea. It's not as specific as the lot, but it gives you a better idea for location purposes.
With the lot lines, they're constantly changing, lots are added.
Okay, okay.
And of course, the lot lines in our GIS system is not 100%. So I think if we do go into streets, we would have a more accurate.
Okay. Now, what about this overall growth area? Are you inclined to leave it as large, or do you think that we need to condense it to those areas that are really focused, knowing where we're going to have the water network to kind of be able to work with that?
I do think we need to show some of the growth area for rural residential along the fringes of the
So the orange
Right,
area
right.
might be a growth area, and then just the rural residential is on the outskirts of that?
Yes.
Okay.
that's the way I see it. And as opposed to having more rural residential development in rural areas and agricultural conservation areas.
What about the corridor development along 360? One of the key points that we made in that concept board was that as you drive through the county, you want to have a mixture of business and that rural landscape. I mean, and if you look at this future land use map, the way it's done now, you essentially you could end up in the next 20 years with the 360 corridor looking like Mechanicsville and not developed in such a way that you have breaks in the landscape. And I'm not sure how. I'm not sure whether that red follows the existing zoning or where they came up with that in that future land use map.
I think we need technical to look at that.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that had any real purpose. When it was.
I'm thinking that what might be the best way to do that is, and as I was driving in tonight, this was when it's still daylight. I was actually looking at where you had these clusters of business development, and that's probably where you have existing commercial zoning. So maybe if we look at the commercial zoning and also look at an aerial map or something that shows where this development is, we can pare down that red.
Would our zoning map provide a little better picture of that?
Yeah, I know it's not all red all the way up there. There's a lot of agriculture going up toward King and Queen. More agriculture up that way than it is. business, but we do have some spot business zoning through there. So,
We'll also need to take a look at where our utilities and our infrastructure can be, easily implemented. In conjunction with, if we do separate out and keep clusters of commercial areas, that's going to need to follow where the infrastructure is as well.
I'm glad you brought that up, because right now, the expansion, you've got a second water tank that is in Manquin, right?
Yeah.
In order to be able to extend the water line towards the industrial parks. So you're going to have that water infrastructure probably from Central Garage, it's like almost all the way. So I think we've got to decide, okay, so how do you want that water used? And obviously you need to, there's a trade-off between residential development and business development. And the priority should probably be for business development for use of that water, as opposed to residential development, in order to be able to kind of pay for it in the long run. And I guess that's exactly what you're trying to get at. So if there are some areas between Central Garage and Manquin that do need to be preserved for the agricultural landscape, we probably need to really take a close look at that.
There's not so much between Central Garage and Mandarin that's agriculture. It's more from Mandarin to the Campbell County line.
Okay.
And also from Central Garage to King and Queen. Actually, from Central Garage to King and Queen, there's pretty good large areas on both sides of the road. That area between Mandarin and Hanover County, it doesn't have water and sewer now, and I'm not sure whether that water and sewer goes all the way to Hanover County line, does it?
No, it goes, like I said,
Just
they're
up to
going to
where it
extend
goes
it to
down
the
to the-
commerce part, right? But gas goes to the Hanover line, but the water does.
But it will, it won't with the new plants.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna reach all the way down to the new plant. I think it's gonna go to the commerce part, and that's gonna be adopted yet. I don't know if it's even gonna reach that new, smaller. It's just built to where Dixon's moved up, or it might, since it's so close, and it's just a little bit up. I know it's not gonna reach to the barn, Red Barn, through that.
No, it's not going to go that far.
So that area up over the red barn is on the.
We've got that now from the county. We've got
Yeah,
a GIS. So I guess what I'll have to do is have our person kind of overlay that.
Gas comes from Hanover County all the way across up to the commerce part, and then it cuts across over to Nestle. So that doesn't come to Central, which is weird. It cuts across at, so Commerce Park has gas, and it cuts across to Nestle. Central doesn't have gas. So that's weird too. Hopefully with the new broadband initiative, hopefully we'll have internet everywhere. That's one thing that's keeping businesses from coming to Kingwood now. Hopefully that's in the works.
My understanding was the gas line, where the gas line stopped.
Can be.
The gas company had said it could be extended if there was a need.
Oh, okay, that's good. Yeah, because they've since come in from West Point and come down
Yes,
to
yes.
west to that. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Maybe we can extend at least to Central. Like the thing, Central would maybe have water, gas, electric, internet. Like I said, it doesn't go much from Central to mine, and where Ayla is, there's a few spotty commercial things in there, small things, but most, like I said, this big red field to the right at the top is all agriculture right now. They just cleared it. The fire department's over there, some tiny little things, not huge areas like that.
I think what we need to do is take a closer look at that, like the area that Evie mentioned, just to the I get mixed up with the east, west, or what, but just to the east of Central Garage, or the southeast of Central Garage, there's 160, 170 acre parcel in there. And that could be tied into other parcels adjacent to it to develop that, what I call a special purpose zone district, which would have mixed use, urban development type development. But you could connect all that together, and what I would look at is connecting it over as far as Kennington, so that we could take a road from Kennington through that area, coming across Federal Road and going over and serving that area that we call the
You'll have
special
to,
zone.
you'll have to show me exactly where you're talking about.
I should have made a lot of copies of those. This is the area. This property line comes up here. But there's some other undeveloped properties in here and here. And this is Kennington here. Kennington is a large development. If we could create access through here to keep a lot of the Kennington traffic directed to the shopping areas in here, to keep it off of 360.
But that's not part of the future land use, man. You're just,
Well, that's what I say needs to be part of the future.
so that you have a new road shown.
Well, I haven't, as this area would be developed, we'd have to have a master plan. And they would have to show on the master plan what the road would be built. But the thought is that if we could work all these together with the developers, and be able to get a road coming from Kennington over there to pull off that traffic, to provide more customers for the shopping centers.
Is that part of this map that you guys used previously?
I haven't shown it that much detail, but it's the same thing.
Here, right? Okay.
What I,
Here, will you hang on to that?
what I
Sure,
said,
give me a
name it.
copy.
what I said to call it was the villages of Central Florida, to give it a place name.
Okay, what about the eastern part of this? At one point in time, the county ended up moving the proposed water tank that was on Kelly Lane to Mainland. And I'm thinking that this map probably has more intensive development east of Central Garage than maybe we probably should show.
East, you mean,
I'm
along Route 30.
Yeah, I'm thinking that if you really want to conserve the area east of Central Garage before you get to the Mattaponi tribal lands and the school and the church, that perhaps the development, the growth area that we have needs to kind of stop right around Kelly Lane or something.
That's the land that the Indian reservation just bought.
Right, so you want to go further west,
And
right?
maybe shrink it up, because like I said, all that land's gonna be reservation land now. We were just
Right.
talking about that last night, yeah, so they
Is that
bought
where the-
200 acres.
Is that where the yellow is?
Yeah,
On that east-
So that yellow needs to kind of go away or
Yes.
something, right?
yeah.
And I'll have to look at it on a map, but it's, so did the land that they purchased, if I took the most western, at the intersection of Kelly Lane and 30, it was the most western one.
To stop it.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking so, yeah, because that's where it goes. They own
Okay.
from Kelly Lane and all that behind. So yeah, if you stopped at that, yeah,
Okay.
that'd be probably as far as you want to come. Couldn't take any more west of Kelly Lane.
Okay.
Don't you think that?
They purchased,
All that land
All
was
Kelly.
Kelly, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Right across from the.
Yeah.
Yep, so. But it is still served by the water that's there, but. That's what, I
I
guess.
think the water line went over to.
Yeah,
30.
to that. And like Ms. Graham said, when they put the new tower and magnet, it's all gonna connect together, so it'll be a big loop, so it'll still serve everyone. Just won't maybe go further west, like I said. Go.
So did they end up doing the loop? Because that's what I couldn't tell in the
We
studies.
passed it, it hadn't started yet, we approved it.
Okay, but it is supposed to have a loop in there.
Right. It's
Because
gonna
at one
connect
point in
together.
time, I thought maybe the
You know
loop
how
had
long
been
it's gonna take?
dropped.
I know we
It's probably gonna be close to 2 years, I think. By the time they get
get
everything
finished.
in and constructed, probably close to 2 years.
Okay, so right now, I think that maybe the thing to do is to drop out that yellow in it and, I have to look at it on a map, but at least go to the most western point of Kelly Lane and look and go from there.
Have that on the, to the south of there, the yellow part to the south. Right across from that.
I'm sorry, Donna.
How about the yellow part to the south of Route 30, right across from what you were just talking about?
Leave that?
So that's what, Dunwich to East River Road, is that? That's a rule, so they, part of the Pamunkey Indian Reservation is right there.
Well, part of the Monkey Indian Reservation is right across from the plant. And that was on like 20-some acres. You know, that was on.
Small parallel place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that in that yellow area? It's hard to tell on this now.
Almost looks like it's in the orange.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's in the orange area. It's not actually in the yellow.
Yeah, so the yellow is.
So do you have that information map somewhere, Sherry? Is it on your GIS? Or you just, it's just kind of what you all know?
Our GIS doesn't specify that area. We could probably help you
Okay,
locate it.
okay.
Yeah, like Don said, maybe that's why if this map was shown just for the road, you might be able to see it better, because with all these crossings, it's hard to tell it's the only lane. This is way down there, me, it should be way up there, this goes.
Oh, yeah.
620.
And so this is, unloose is there. And right now it shows down to here.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, that's what you.
That's really, yeah, so yeah, it needs to be shrunk up, you know, to have,
So
at least maybe directly across.
So probably. What unions?
Yeah.
They don't have this in here, so after this is well beyond
Right. That's true. So,
both of these. Now, what I'm looking at is trying to keep as much of the rural residential out of this area and provide some areas where we can have rural residential.
right. Keep it up here.
It could be either down here or up
Right.
So, I mean, we got a pretty
Yeah.
substantial amount up
Mhm.
to the
Up
west.
there already, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll look at leaving as much of that as we can, but taking out the Indian lands. And really trying to be as sensitive as we can for whatever kind of development
Mhm.
that we have there.
Another,
I'll just have to look at.
well, in that same area where the industrial area is, and that's where the Nestle Korean plant is. My understanding is that there's, that same clay material that they mine is located in some of the surrounding areas of the industrial area that we got listed as medium density residential. I'm wondering if that should be preserved more for industrial, if that's a potential, future mining, future there. And I don't know exactly where it is.
I don't want to tell anybody
Yeah,
probably
right.
either, right?
But the understanding is that there is some.
Well, I think we need to do. to look at that.
Well, in that area, it's very convenient because it's accessible to Route 30 to head towards West Point and Interstate 64 east towards the ports. It's 30 west to 95, 360 to the northern neck, and also Richmond side.
Is your blue area on your map, is that the Commerce Park or is that Tally County?
That's your industrial park. Do you call it Fountain Blue? How do you-
Fountain Blue.
Yeah.
Fountain Blue?
Yeah, Fountain Blue is the right spell, yes.
Yeah. And like I said, I just kind of adapted this map based on a previous map because it seemed to be something that was kind of working. So I have no idea how they actually developed those lines to begin with. And Sherry said that it was done before she got here, and it's not on their GIS system either. So we'll have to figure out.
Yeah. I think what Matt was talking about, if we could better identify the use of that land across from the industrial park now, across Dunluce Road. That's what we're talking about.
I believe, yeah. That's,
If we could better identify where that is, I think it would be good to expand the industrial area
Okay,
or other types of industrial use.
okay.
yeah, it might be transportation companies or.
Yeah.
Warehousing
Warehousing.
distribution, yeah. Because I believe Nestle Purina, they end up shipping a lot of their loads to Chester, to a warehouse in Chester before it gets shipped out elsewhere. And I don't know if that's because it's a lack of warehousing opportunities locally, or if it's so now they figured that it's cheaper to do that or what. But I do know that that's something that they utilize a rather large warehouse in Chester.
I saw something, maybe it was in Joel's report, that we had about 500 acres in the industrial park. If we've got that much, it's underused.
There are additional parcels in the industrial park that
Yes.
are, that are available.
I think they recently built another warehouse.
Well, they have a large expansion, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is 17
And
million.
I don't know,
That's pretty good.
I don't know how much of that additional space is being taken up by that. But another thing to consider is across the street from that park is Dunluce, which I believe was one of the places listed as a historical landmark. Not that it's listed as on that, what is that?
Is that David Robinson speaking? Is that
Dunluce is,
Robinson?
I'm not sure who it's at.
But that's on the other side.
But that is across, it's across Dunluce Road from the
Is that,
in the
on-
yellow section right there.
is that on the National Register, or is it
I
just
don't believe
something
it's
that's
on-
local that,
I think it was one of those notable locations that they were looking at. possibly.
Okay.
I don't believe it's on the actual register, though.
okay.
It's in here somewhere. I don't know what page.
Okay, well, you all have given me a lot of really good information. I think I just need to be able to digest it, talk it over with our mapping person, to see how we basically kind of adjust some of these things. And I guess what we'll do is that we'll be in contact too with Betty Brooks to see how we can work with it. But let me see. So let me kind of just go over some of the things that I've noted. Use an underlay that shows the streets, right, and maybe we can follow some lot lines, but take the lot lines off this map. Tighten up the growth area so that it's more towards the orange. And the rural keep the rural residential on the outskirts. So what we might end up doing is that we might have a growth area maybe, and maybe we define it as 2040 or something like that. And then we make this other one future growth area or something like that. Look more in depth at the corridor where we have existing business zoning and existing business opportunities. I guess we'll end up doing that same thing with the industrial parks. Look at the area from Central Garage to King and Queen, that some of that needs to be freed up as agriculture. And that there also needs to be some agricultural areas that are from Banquet to Hanover, right? Amend the tribal lands around Kelly Lane and also where you have the powwow area. And I'm not sure where that is, but Sherry will give me that, or
Yeah, near Dundas, so between Dundas on the other side of the street.
Are you gonna try to do those in the gray, the tribal areas now?
I don't know where they are. I guess, do they have a map that maybe they're willing to share? I need to call.
Right now, it looks like it's in the orange for Kelly. Lane.
Yeah, we
Kinda
need to
goes-
put tribal lands, I think.
No,
Oh,
Indian.
And it's
You're
on
right,
both
okay.
sides of Kelly.
Do you want to include tribal lands on the future land use map? It just helps to understand it
I
better,
think we
doesn't
need
it?
to know where they're at.
Okay.
We can't regulate them,
Right.
but it would be nice to know where they're at, because it does determine what we could do around that area.
Okay. But you don't have that real estate information, right?
Well, I mean, we have the ownership, I guess.
it was just bought like the last 6 months.
Yeah,
We have to just go by the records that Kelvin sold to the reservation.
we should be able to get this.
Okay, all right, well, let's
It's pretty
try
much
it.
all that 200 acres, it's right there between Kelly Lane, because all of it was supposed to be a subdivision.
Yeah, and you can kind of, I think it's where that kind of goes up between the red and the yellow. You can see that kind of goes up into like a pie.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the area right there. Because Kelly would kind of come up behind those houses.
Are you talking about behind Tractor Supply?
Next to it,
Next to it?
yeah. Starting down there, right across the street from the Dipset entrance, it's Kelly Lane.
So it's the first Kelly Lane.
Right, that's where it all up
And
in
it
there.
loops around.
It moves all the way to the other.
Right.
And then, Don, you just want to look at these, in particular, these parcels there at Central Garage and how we might just encourage the right kind of village kind of development and density
Yes.
in those areas.
And we put something about where the utilities were, how far the water will go and where the gas is?
You know, I have that information, but the reason that I did not include it in the plan is that I'm a little reluctant sometimes to put things like public water
Oh,
lines for security
safety,
reasons.
Right.
So I don't,
That'd be all right. Yeah, we can keep that just with us. We know where it is.
well, I can provide you that map. I can send that to Sherry and she can give it to you all. And that way you can tell, but I'm not gonna put it in the overall
Right.
plan. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Is there a way to maybe have a service area of different types of utilities shaded maybe, as opposed to showing actual transmission lines?
Well, when you have a main, how do you know where that service area is other than there might just be a corridor? I mean, it's essentially the 360 corridor if you did it that way. I'll think about that because it would be nice to at least have some kind of a shaded area through there that says this is the public service
Right.
area.
Potential for certain.
Yeah.
And obviously in 2 years, that's gonna change once, once that additional water tower is online, and that loop is complete.
Once all that is in, that really help.
Yeah. With a much larger area. It almost would be helpful to have a future service. Area. So we
This is
know
the
where we
future.
can have certain types of, of development plan, because we know that it'll be,
Yeah, I've never put together something like that, but it seems like something that would be very, very useful. So I'll talk with our maps person and see if we can come up with something.
This is Kelly Lane. And these two parts here are what Kelly has brought and what was sold to the. So that's on that map that you copied. If you wanted to mark those.
Tell them. Two. This one? Those three?
Yeah.
Okay.
trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, let me see, do we have one more slide? That was my next steps. Refine the future land use. And I'm thinking that maybe the thing to do is that I work on this, maybe have some direct conversations with you, Don, and maybe just share all that with everybody. And if I need to come back again, when's your next meeting?
Next Tuesday.
Next year?
Next Tuesday. Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Well, it isn't gonna happen next Tuesday.
That's the last one for that.
But we like to get together to discuss amongst ourselves
We-
with
we
John.
have a
Maybe
look.
John can see this presentation.
Yeah, we
We
need to
could-
have a look.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe schedule some kind of a special work session or something in December?
I did get some available dates from Chris this afternoon. She has Tuesday, December 14th, it's open. January the 11th and January 18th, which are also on Tuesdays. I told her to stay away from the Wednesdays because it's church night and a lot of people aren't available. But we also need to think of a day for the public meeting, and we need to have it far enough out that we give plenty of notice. So if it works for everybody, maybe we could do that on the 18th of January. And that'll give us plenty of time to get the announcement out that we're gonna have it then.
I think we wanted to go to the first before it got to them, right? So it
Yeah.
kind of mostly ironed out. And then
Yeah, I think we have to get first we have to get the land use map ironed out. But if we can do that in December, I mean, we can already post this plan. And maybe I don't know about the future land use map. I really want to get that straightened out because that could be a bigger.
But we do
maybe
need to
just-
give a few weeks notice to the public. And that's over a month, so it's whatever y'all feel like we could do.
Y'all think December 14th?
It's actually not a good day for me.
That was the only day you had December.
Well, I told her to stay away from the
Wednesday.
Wednesdays, and, you know, Christmas is just 3.5 weeks
That's
away.
true.
So that week is pretty much out. It's hard to get
Right. right.
people together the week of Christmas.
Well, somebody was mentioning that, since we have a meeting, for us next week, could we maybe add a work session
We
afterwards?
could just do a work session after. We do have,
Since we're already
We
here.
have 4 public hearings.
Oh, so it's gonna be long. Oh, that's right, that's what all this stuff is.
We can tentatively do it depending on the time, I guess.
when,
To next week, depending on the time, however long it takes us to get through the public hearings.
I don't mind taking a little extra time.
I mean, if we're gonna be here, I wouldn't mind, yeah, I'd be fine with that.
I think it's something that we need to, I mean, if we're gonna be here, it would probably be advantageous to go ahead and talk about it that night, at least amongst us, that we could then get back to them, that would be my feeling, and I'd like Mr. Brady to be a part of that conversation for us to all be on the same page. So I guess we really need to just play it by ear to see how long the public hearings last, and then decide whether we're up for a little bit longer, but that would be my recommendation. And then if we need to schedule another date, we can do that.
All right, well, I will try to get some kind of revision to you by Tuesday.
I know that's gonna be a short timeline. for
Yeah,
you, but
it's what I'm worried about is it's not necessarily, I don't know how he has to work it with, in terms of the lot lines and everything. So it might be that
my thought is, I don't even know that we really need you to do that. I think that's still, we need to take what we've discussed tonight with you, talk about it some more amongst all of us, and then try to provide that back to you would be my thought, for you to take that and compile it into a revised map. What do y'all think?
Maybe you could talk to your guy and see how hard it would be to take out the underlay
The things.
lot lines, and if they could
okay.
use roads instead, not do it, to see if they could.
I think he can probably do that. I think he can do that. And
We could come up with which roads and all that, like you said, move this and then maybe come up, share it, give you the exact. I think Mr. Wagner gave you the lot lines of Kellum, you know where some of the driveway is,
okay.
If we have roads, most of the divisions between the different sections are gonna be based on roads anyway.
Right, not lots. Yeah, it's just so jumbled up with these. This one, all the bonds here with the roads, is a lot clearer.
I know, my thought would be for Sherry to come up with something that is bigger that we could all walk to and
It sounds
point
like a
out,
table.
and then try to get that compiled in a way to get back to you for
What I
some
was looking
discussions.
at, Sherry, what I was looking at was a street map.
Okay,
She did. Could you do
There.
Oh,
Yeah.
but I'm fairly certain that he can take the street map and
Just
because this future land use is in a layer on top of this other map, so I think he can just insert the street map on that
take out the lot.
and take out the other.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
That sounds right, all the computers these days.
and he can work miracles with his mapping.
He is good. He is good. Okay, one question that I wanted to have, last one is the work session with the Board of Zoning Appeal, the Board of Supervisors and the EDA. After we get planning commission squared away in the land use map, do you want to have a public meeting first before you have a work session with the Board of Zoning? Board of Supervisors, it's getting late, I guess. Board of Supervisors and the EDA, do you want to have a public meeting first before you have a work session with them?
I would recommend it because there may be some ideas that come up that you may want to change and get us close to the final document before we go to the Board of Supervisors and EDA. And then, of course, there may be some additional changes. And then we'll hold another public meeting before we go into the public hearings. So,
That sounds good.
They don't want to bring something to our board. But before that's half finished, not even us knowing what's going on. We have something that we concrete or agree upon, that's better, yeah. And
We would want to get as close to finished as we could be.
Are there some key members with the Board of Supervisors other than you, Mr. Greenwood? Key members of the Board of Supervisors or the EDA that basically you may want to share this draft plan with?
well, it's already been shared to the Board of Supervisors.
Oh, it has?
Yeah, county administrator already sent it to everybody. So we've seen the draft. I mean, if they have something that they see that they really have to have, we could always, they could speak to me and I could relay it to
Okay.
this board if they really, oh, this is complete. But I don't think that's gonna happen.
All right, well, that's all I have. It's been productive for me. I appreciate your time tonight. And do we want to set a time for when we might get some additional comments back? At least to me, if you want to do a public meeting in January,
that'll be up to the planning commission.
If we talk about this on December 8th, whatever we come up with on 8th, we can get that information back.
okay. And then there might be some tweaks in the text somewhere that, that hopefully I can take care of that. But hopefully there are not any surprises or anything that I've that I've missed or put something in there that's giving people heartburn.
I've got some comments that I can send you. And just share.
That'd be good. And if you all want to mark it up as a PDF or just send me a list with page number, that's fine.
I think John would like that, 'cause he likes PDFs, if you could send that, or maybe if you've already got it, I don't know. Do we have a
Well,
PDF?
I sent the PDF originally
That's what I thought. So
and
you
then
probably
we
already
made a
got it.
copy and
Yes.
gave it to everybody. And I will send him the PowerPoint.
That's what I was wondering, this, yeah,
in the
'cause it's a
morning.
little off books, that's kind of hard to follow, it'd be nice for him to watch that.
And I'd be happy to Zoom with him, talk with him. When he's up to it.
Well, do you want me to hold off on doing anything for the 18th to see if we can hold the work session next week after our meeting?
Yeah.
And we'll have our normal meeting in January as well.
Mhm.
That we can have time to talk and discuss it as well.
So we
Might
will,
not have enough time to announce it, if we wait till the January.
No, I didn't mean that,
Oh.
we're to announce it, that gives us another opportunity. to
We
discuss.
get, yeah. We probably know maybe by the next meeting, and then
Yeah, I think we need to wait until our next meeting and we've had a chance to discuss, to know about the date for the 18th. I think that's what we should strive towards, but, not knowing whether we're actually gonna get to talk after all the public hearings, next week. I think we just need to wait until then to make the decision about the 18th.
I wanted to thank your company, this man was very impressive, I love the colors and the way you presented it here. The board members are appreciative of that too. We don't usually get, sometimes stuff we get, we can't even decipher. It's kind of blurry, but this is excellent.
No, thank you very much. Well, it took a while to get there.
Not as long as our last one. Thank you for coming as well. If anyone else have any questions for her?
No, but I think we have our homework cut out for
Yeah.
us.
That was all we had on the agenda, so nothing else to discuss with Ms. Graham.
This was just the work session for the comp plan for tonight, yeah.
I guess I'll accept the motion to adjourn if you'd like. Thanks, anything else in the ring?
Nothing else, but I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion made, probably seconded to adjourn. Just do a aye, nay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing it's just, we'll close the meeting. Thanks everyone for coming.